On February 16, 2014, the Danling County Emergency Center in Meishan City, Sichuan Province, received an urgent emergency call. The caller was a middle-aged man named Chen Chuanhua. According to his account, the family was having breakfast, and everything seemed normal when suddenly his wife, Zhang Lei, and their eldest daughter, Xiao Xue, started showing unusual symptoms. Both complained of discomfort and fainted one after the other, collapsing to the floor. Minutes later, while the other family members were still trying to grasp what was happening, Zhang and Xiao Xue's faces turned bluish, and foam began pouring from their mouths, creating a horrifying scene. Everyone was shocked and terrified, prompting them to call emergency services immediately. Approximately 10 minutes later, an ambulance arrived at the scene. Zhang and her daughter were quickly transported to Danling County People's Hospital for emergency treatment. In the hospital's emergency room, both mother and daughter began convulsing, showing rapid heart rates, increasingly bluish faces, and foaming at the mouth. The situation became critical when they started vomiting blood, eventually slipping into a deep coma. After intense emergency efforts to save them from the brink of death, doctors administered sedatives. However, the mysterious illness continued to worsen, threatening their lives at any moment. This required doctors to remain by their bedside around the clock. Meanwhile, officers from the Danling County Police Department arrived at the hospital to investigate the cause of the incident. Shortly thereafter, bad news emerged from the emergency room. Due to limited medical resources and facilities, the hospital might not be able to handle a further deterioration in the patient's conditions. The attending doctors, reluctant to take responsibility for their worsening state, informed Hua of the critical situation and advised him to transfer his wife and daughter to a higher-tier hospital with better resources to ensure proper care and safety during further treatment. Faced with such a dire situation, Hua promptly arranged to transfer his wife and daughter to Meishan City People's Hospital for further emergency treatment. However, the Danling County Hospital was nearly 31 miles from Meishan City, and with heavy traffic, it would take at least 40 minutes for the ambulance to reach the hospital. This posed significant risks for Zhang and Xiao Xue during the transfer. By around 9:30 a.m. that day, the ambulance reached Meishan City People's Hospital. At that point, Zhang Lei and Xiao Xue's vital signs were critically weak, and their breathing was barely perceptible. Medical staff quickly moved them into the intensive care unit for immediate treatment. According to the attending doctors, Hua's eldest daughter, Xiao Xue, was suffering from severe oxygen deprivation in her brain, which could result in significant brain damage. Zhang's condition was similarly grim. She continued to vomit uncontrollably, experiencing persistent convulsions. At one point, her heart stopped, forcing the doctors to perform external defibrillation to restart her heartbeat. Once her condition stabilized slightly, the doctors performed gastric lavage on Zhang. After the procedure, her vomiting and hematemesis symptoms subsided. The doctors then sent her stomach contents for testing. Preliminary results indicated that Zhang was likely poisoned, but the specific toxic substance remained uncertain. Meanwhile, the Danling County Police began analyzing the case. Their initial hypothesis was that the symptoms manifested during breakfast, suggesting that the meal might have contained toxic substances harmful to the body. If this assumption were correct, there would be two possible scenarios. The first is that some of the dishes served at breakfast that morning contained ingredients that reacted adversely with each other, leading to food poisoning. The second is that someone deliberately added poison to the breakfast consumed by the mother and daughter. To better understand the events of that morning, the police could only question Hua. However, to their surprise, after his wife and daughter lost consciousness, Hua also suddenly fainted. He regained consciousness only after receiving emergency treatment. The doctor responsible for Hua's diagnosis and treatment suspected that he had fainted due to exposure to the same toxin as his wife and daughter. However, subsequent tests disproved this theory. Based on Hua's comprehensive clinical presentation, the doctor ruled out poisoning as the cause of his fainting. This finding left the police perplexed. After all, the entire family had eaten the same breakfast. Why then were only Zhang and Xiao Xue poisoned, while Hua was not? From the time of the incident to the transfer of his wife and daughter to the higher-tier hospital, Hua remained alert throughout the entire process of transportation and emergency care. It was only after hearing the news that his wife and daughter had been poisoned that he suddenly fainted. Could such a coincidence really happen? Something about the situation didn't seem to add up. Regardless of whether it was a coincidence, the immediate priority was to determine exactly what the family had eaten during that fateful breakfast. 2 hours after the incident, the police conducted a search at the victim's home. They inspected the premises and collected samples of the family's breakfast for testing. However, as soon as the police entered the house, they noticed something unusual. The house was astonishingly clean. From the living room to the kitchen, everything was spotless, without a speck of dust, as if someone had intentionally cleaned the place. At the time of the incident, Zhang and Xiaojue had exhibited symptoms of vomiting, yet the police found no traces of vomit at the scene. The bowls and chopsticks used for breakfast had been washed and neatly placed on the counter. Even the kitchen trash had been emptied and cleaned. Everything in the house had been meticulously tidied. Could someone have deliberately tampered with the crime scene? The police began a thorough investigation. Eventually, they found 2 pieces of tissue paper on the kitchen counter, which still contained small traces of vomit. This unusual situation left the investigating officers puzzled. What happened next was even stranger. On the dining table, the leftover food from that morning was neatly arranged, presumably the same dishes the Hua family had eaten for breakfast. However, the nearby rice cooker contained only a small amount of rice. Logically, the rice should have remained untouched since Zhang and her daughter were poisoned before they could eat it. Given the unnaturally clean condition of the scene, the police suspected that someone had discarded the remaining rice. Fortunately, they found a few grains of rice still stuck in the cooker. The police collected these rice grains along with the leftover dishes from the table and sent them to the lab for testing and analysis. The police were eager to identify the mysterious person who had cleaned the crime scene, so they began reconstructing the timeline of the incident. At around 7 a.m., the Hua family was having breakfast when the food poisoning occurred. Approximately 30 minutes later, the ambulance arrived to transport the mother and daughter to the hospital. Almost 2 hours later, at around 9 a.m., the police arrived at Hua's home to investigate. From this timeline, it became evident that the mysterious individual must have entered Hua's house between 7:30 and 9 a.m. Based on this window of nearly 2 hours, the police deduced that the person likely lived close to Hua's home, allowing them enough time to clean the scene before the police arrived. Thus, the investigation focused on the areas surrounding Hua's residence. Soon, they discovered that only one person had visited Hua's house during that time: Hua's mother, Zhao Muchen. According to Zhao's account, her house is located approximately 1,640 feet from her son's home. That morning, she had just returned from the market when she noticed a large group of people gathered on the street gossiping. Out of curiosity, she approached them to find out what was happening. She learned that something had happened to her son's family. Panicked, Zhao rushed to Hua's house to check on them. By the time she arrived, the ambulance had already taken the family to the hospital, and no one else was home. Zhao entered the kitchen and saw the floor covered in vomit, which she found extremely dirty, so she decided to clean it up with a mop. Zhao's statement appeared reasonable and showed no obvious inconsistencies. However, the Danling police still had questions. Typically, if a mother learns that her child has been poisoned severely enough to require emergency treatment, she would be anxious and rush to the hospital to find out what was happening. But Zhao displayed an unusual calmness, so much so that she methodically cleaned the entire scene of the incident. Was Zhao's behavior deliberate, or was it merely coincidental? While the police were struggling to draw conclusions, a statement from a neighbor reignited their suspicions. The neighbor mentioned that Zhao usually visited Hua's house every morning for breakfast, but on the morning of the incident, she did not. This unexpected information deepened the police's doubts about Zhao's involvement in the poisoning. Could it be that Zhao had received a prior warning, which explained why she did not go to Hua's house that morning for breakfast? When questioned, Zhao remained calm and showed no signs of fear. She simply explained that she had already eaten breakfast at home that morning before heading to the market, which was why she hadn't gone to her son's house for breakfast. Faced with Zhao's explanation, the police had no choice but to rule out their suspicions of her. However, one of the officers handling the case, guided by instinct and professional experience, entertained a chilling theory. What if Chen Chuanhua himself had poisoned the breakfast and told his mother beforehand, "Don't come over for breakfast this morning. After everything settles down, come to the house and clean up the scene"? If this theory were true, what could have driven Hua and Zhao Muchen to poison Jiang and her daughter Xiao Shui? Approximately 12 hours later, the forensic doctor obtained the toxicology results. A preliminary examination of the 4 leftover dishes from Hua's home revealed no traces of poison or any adverse interactions among the foods. However, a small amount of rat poison was detected in the rice grains. This poison, highly toxic, is colloquially known in China as 3 steps, meaning that ingesting even a small amount can cause death within 3 steps. It is an extremely potent rat poison. The police concluded that this was a deliberate poisoning. The presence of the poison exclusively in the rice and Zhao Muchen's actions of cleaning, only the rice cooker heightened the police's suspicions that Zhao might be involved in a serious crime. The police interrogated Zhao again, and her subsequent statements added more twist to the already convoluted case. Zhao claimed that while cleaning, she had not disposed of evidence, but instead had fed the leftover rice to the chickens. The police accompanied Zhao to the backyard of Hua's house, where they found remnants of rice scattered on the ground and discovered that the chickens in the yard had all died. Seeing this, both Zhao and the police were shocked. Zhao, visibly distressed, explained that she had no idea the rice was poisoned. She thought it was just regular leftover rice and didn't want to waste it, so she gave it to the chickens, unaware they would be poisoned. At this point, the police noted a peculiar detail. If Zhao had known the rice was poisoned, she likely would not have fed it to the chickens. Moreover, based on prior interviews and investigations, the police could not identify any motive for Zhao to poison her daughter-in-law and granddaughter. Consequently, the Danling police temporarily ruled Zhao out as a suspect. However, her son, Chen Chuanhua, remained the primary suspect, as he was the only family member who ate breakfast that morning without showing any symptoms. The police continued questioning people in the area to investigate Hua's social relationships. Everyone they spoke to gave consistent responses, describing Hua as a kind and gentle person. They noted that he and his wife, Zhang, appeared to have a harmonious relationship without any visible conflicts or arguments. During this investigation, the police also discovered that Hua's residence was a commercial building located along the road. The first floor served as a storage area for the family's business, selling livestock feed. The kitchen where the incident occurred was in a room on the first floor. The second floor was the family's living quarters. Upon observation, the police noted that if a mysterious individual wanted to access the kitchen and poison the rice, they would have had to enter through the shop's rolling door. However, when asked, neighbors reported seeing no suspicious individuals entering Hua's shop that morning. Furthermore, the rolling door had been tightly shut the night before the incident, with no signs of anyone entering or leaving. From these points, the police speculated that it was unlikely an outsider had poisoned the food. At this moment, Zhao Muchen provided an unexpected piece of information. She recounted that due to financial difficulties, her 38-year-old son, Chen Chuanhua, remained unmarried until 2012. Through a family-arranged matchmaking event, Hua met his current wife, Zhang. Zhang had been previously married, and her daughter Xiao Yue was from her previous marriage. Despite this, Hua did not resent Zhang. A year later, Zhang and her daughter married Hua, and shortly after their wedding, Hua and Zhang had a baby girl together. As for why Chen Chuanhua was not poisoned, he explained. On the morning of the incident, he was busy taking care of his young daughter, so he let Zhang and Xiaoxue eat first. This, he claimed, could be the reason his poisoning symptoms were not as severe as theirs. Hua's explanation seemed flawless, leaving the police unable to identify any inconsistencies. However, his next actions raised further suspicions. While his wife and stepdaughter were in critical condition in the hospital, Hua appeared unusually calm, relaxed, and indifferent, as if unconcerned about their health. What was even more bizarre was that just 2 days after Zhang and Xiaoxue were admitted to the hospital, while their condition remained critical, Hua attempted to discharge them and take them home. When questioned by the police and doctors about his reasoning, Hua expressed frustration. He claimed he needed to return home to work and earn money to pay for their medical expenses, as staying in the hospital was costing a significant amount of money. If he couldn't proceed with the discharge, he insisted on returning home to retrieve Zhang Li's 200,000 yuan in savings. Hearing 200,000 yuan immediately aroused the suspicions of the Danling police. They learned that Zhang's former husband, Chen Moquan, had been an electrician. 5 years earlier, during maintenance work on a power tower, he suffered a fatal workplace accident. Following his death, the power company compensated Zhang and her daughter with a bank card containing 200,000 yuan. After marrying Hua, Zhang gave the bank card to Hua, but did not share the password, which only she knew. Upon discovering this information, the investigating officers grew even more suspicious of Hua. Could it be that he poisoned his wife and stepdaughter to seize this sum of money? Following this suspicion, the police secretly investigated Hua's financial situation over the past few months. They discovered that Hua was struggling financially. For the past 3 months, his livestock feed business had been slow, with few customers. He owed 35,000 yuan to his suppliers, and creditors had been coming to his home weekly to demand repayment. This led the police to suspect that Hua, feeling desperate, may have sought to claim the 200,000 yuan from Zhang to pay off his debts, and in doing so, orchestrated a cold-blooded poisoning to kill her and her daughter. On the afternoon of the 3rd day after the incident, the police unexpectedly summoned Hua for further questioning. However, he adamantly refused to confess. In the interrogation room, he was visibly agitated and unable to control his anger. Instead of directly answering the police's questions, Hua challenged them to produce evidence, which caused the interrogation to stall for over an hour. His behavior, however, only strengthened the police's suspicion that he was hiding something. Yet, due to insufficient evidence, the police were forced to release Hua after 24 hours in custody. Unbeknownst to anyone, on February 16, 2014, the 4th day after the incident, Zhang finally regained consciousness after a harrowing fight for her life. Her first words were, "Where is Xiaoxue?" At this point, Xiaoxue remained in a deep coma, with her condition worsening. Meanwhile, the hospital informed Hua and Zhang that the initial deposit of 10,000 yuan they had paid was nearly exhausted. Given Xiaoxue's critical condition, even if she were to regain consciousness, she would still need to stay in the hospital for an extended period for monitoring before being discharged. The doctors therefore requested Hua to pay at least 50,000 yuan in medical expenses to cover her ongoing treatment. For an average family, this was a significant sum. After much discussion, Zhang Lei ultimately decided to use part of the 200,000 yuan compensation she had received after her first husband's death to fund her daughter's treatment. She instructed Hua to withdraw 100,000 yuan from the account. After retrieving the money, Hua hurried back to the hospital and handed over the full 100,000 yuan to cover Xiaoxue's medical costs. This move temporarily eased the financial burden, and Xiaoxue's treatment was secured. Hua's actions seemed contrary to the police's suspicions, as he didn't appear to use the money to pay off his debts. Could Hua truly have had no connection to the poisoning? This unexpected turn of events left the police in a quandary. They decided to further investigate Hua's past social connections. During their inquiry, the police discovered a peculiar phone number in Hua's call history. According to the records, a phone number ending in 838 had called Hua nearly every day for the past 6 months, making 3 calls each day. Even more unusual was the activity on the night before the poisoning, February 11th, 2014. Between 9:22 p.m. and 11:59 p.m., the 838 number called Hua 5 times, behavior that had not appeared previously in Hua's call logs. At this point, the police suspected that the frequent calls from the 838 number were likely linked to the poisoning case. Using identification and household registration systems, the Danling police traced the number to a woman named Huang Huali. At the time of the incident, Huang was 38 years old and lived in Meishan City, Sichuan Province. She and Hua were from the same hometown, Shunlong Township in Danling County. Based on the frequency of their calls, investigators speculated that their relationship was far from ordinary. The Danling police extracted the text message records between Huang Huali and Chen Chuanhua. They discovered that the content of their messages was vague and intimate, unlike typical exchanges between two acquaintances from the same hometown. Based on this, the police concluded that the two were having an affair, a claim Hua later confirmed. Hua admitted that 15 years earlier, he and Huang had been in a romantic relationship, with Huang being his first love. Although they eventually married other people, they remained in contact, and their messages reflected the lingering closeness between them. The police interrogated Hua, asking, "On the night before the incident, Huang Huali's phone repeatedly called you. What exactly happened?" Hua calmly explained that they had an argument that night, prompting Huang to call him repeatedly to continue the discussion. Hua added that on the second day, after his wife and stepdaughter were mysteriously poisoned, he had briefly suspected Huang might be involved, but was too overwhelmed to report this to the police. This revelation was a critical piece of information, making Huang the prime suspect in the eyes of the police. According to Hua, if Huang had poisoned the rice, she must have been at his home the night before the incident. To investigate further, the police reviewed surveillance footage near the scene. After careful examination, they uncovered a suspicious video. In the footage from the early morning of February 12, 2014, at approximately 1:05 a.m., a woman wearing a down jacket was seen walking southward from the north. Despite the snowy weather and the poor video quality, it was clear that the woman was carrying a bag. She placed the bag near a shop and then exited the frame, heading north. Not far to the north was Hua's house, located directly across the street. About 7 minutes later, the same woman reappeared in the footage, now carrying 2 bags. She carefully arranged the bags and then walked southward, disappearing from the camera's view. About a minute later, the woman reappeared at the spot where she had earlier placed the bags, standing still and not leaving. Roughly 5 minutes later, a taxi appeared on the footage, stopping by the roadside. The woman entered the taxi with her bags, and the vehicle drove southward, before turning around and disappearing northward from the camera's view. The police strongly suspected that the mysterious woman seen late at night was Huang Huali. However, due to the low resolution of the nighttime footage, Hua was unable to confirm her identity. The police turned their attention to finding the taxi driver for questioning. When shown a photo of Huang, the driver, Wang Moji, confidently identified her as the woman he had driven that night. He recalled the incident vividly, noting the heavy snowfall and even mentioning that he had stepped out of the vehicle to help her move her belongings. Based on the testimony of taxi driver Wang Moji, the Danling police confirmed that Huang Huali had indeed been near Hua's house on the night before the incident. On the 7th day after the poisoning occurred, the police located Huang at a rented apartment and arrested her for questioning. In the interrogation room, Huang's confession shocked the officers. Despite the police's firm stance, Huang remained calm. She did not deny her relationship with Hua, but when asked about her actions on the night of February 11th, she flatly denied any wrongdoing. She claimed she had been at her apartment, made phone calls to Hua, and then gone to sleep without leaving her residence. Huang's statement contradicted the evidence and findings previously gathered by the police, further heightening their suspicions. However, Huang's silence left the police with little leverage. They decided to retrieve surveillance footage near Huang's apartment to verify whether she had gone out on the night of the incident. As expected, the footage revealed Huang walking along the street. In the video, she was wearing a black down jacket and brown snow boots, matching the clothing of the mysterious woman captured near Hua's house. Faced with the undeniable video evidence, Huang Huali could no longer deny her actions. Instead, she fell silent before finally confessing her crime. She admitted that on the night in question, she went alone to Hua's house. However, during their last phone call, Hua had told her that he and his family were staying with relatives and would not be returning home that night. Frustrated and angry, Huang kicked Hua's front door. To her surprise, the rolling door was unlocked. At that moment, a malicious thought crossed her mind. She wanted to scare Hua as revenge for rejecting her. Huang went to a nearby market where she purchased a packet of rat poison for 20 yuan. She returned to Hua's house, entered the dark kitchen, and saw some leftover food on the table. Initially, she intended to sprinkle the poison on the leftovers, but feared the family might throw them away the next day. In a panic, she decided to add the poison to the rice in the electric rice cooker on the counter. Huang then used a serving spoon to thoroughly mix the poison into the rice, ensuring it was evenly distributed. Afterward, she began to feel terrified. She threw the packet of rat poison down a hill behind Hua's house. Before leaving the scene, Huang noticed some New Year's groceries on the floor and impulsively took a bag of apples and 2 cartons of milk. She then called a taxi to return to her apartment, which was how the street surveillance cameras had captured her movements. The police later brought Huang to Hua's house to confirm the crime scene. After over 4 hours of careful searching, they found the discarded packet of rat poison at the base of a hillside. Forensic analysis revealed Huang's fingerprints on the container. Finally, the life-threatening poisoning case was brought to light. However, an unusual twist followed. When Hua learned that Huang was responsible for the poisoning, he showed no surprise or shock, as if he had anticipated the outcome. This behavior left the police team confused and unsettled, further deepening the mystery surrounding Hua's involvement. At this point, Huang revealed the reason behind her cruel actions. Years earlier, Huang and Hua had been classmates in middle school. Over time, their friendship developed into a romantic relationship. However, due to Hua's family's poor financial situation, Huang did not want to marry him. In 2005, Hua decided to leave their hometown to find work, hoping to save money for a proper betrothal gift and marry the woman he loved. But when Hua returned home for the new year the following year, he learned that Huang had already married someone else. Heartbroken and disappointed, Hua confronted Huang, asking why she had left him to marry someone else. Huang's response left him devastated. Although she was married, she confessed to feeling an emptiness in her heart and asked Hua to continue being with her as before. Still deeply in love with Huang, Hua agreed. The two maintained a secret affair. While Huang enjoyed the clandestine nature of their relationship, Hua did not. He hoped Huang would divorce her husband so they could be together openly, as Hua believed that getting married and starting a family was the most important goal in his life. However, after waiting 6 years, Huang still had not divorced her husband and insisted on continuing their hidden relationship. Frustrated, Hua broke off the affair and later married Zhang. Even after marrying Zhang, Hua could not fully escape Huang's grasp. Under her threats, Hua occasionally met with Huang, though their relationship had lost its former affection. Then, in October 2012, Huang's husband, Li Mugao, discovered the affair. Following the confrontation, Hua decided to end the relationship with Huang completely. Not long after, Huang divorced her husband. Watching Hua's family grow increasingly happy, Huang became consumed with envy and resentment, convinced that Hua had played a role in her husband's decision to leave her. She believed that once divorced, Hua would choose her and they could be together, building a happy life. But to her shock, Hua distanced himself from her completely. Huang's heart filled with bitterness and hatred, leading her to devise the poisoning plan. In her mind, she only intended to threaten Hua, but the consequences turned out to be far more severe than she anticipated. Although the case was resolved, the damage caused by Huang Huali remained permanent for the victim's family. After a long period of treatment, Zhang Luo's eldest daughter, Xiao Shui, survived the poisoning but suffered irreversible damage from the severe toxin exposure. The once kind and gentle girl became disabled. Most of her teeth fell out, leaving her unable to speak. Additionally, her memory and other bodily functions continued to deteriorate. Xiaoxue could only recognize her parents and grandparents. Beyond that, she could no longer identify anyone else. Huang, now in detention, expressed deep remorse after learning of Xiaoxue's condition. She was overwhelmed with guilt, unable to believe that her impulsive actions had ruined the life of an innocent child. Although Chen Chuanhua was fortunate not to have been poisoned, he carried the burden of knowing that his actions indirectly led to the tragic fate of his stepdaughter. This realization became a permanent scar on his heart, one that he would carry with him for the rest of his life. As for Huang Huali, the perpetrator of the case, she was charged with attempted murder causing severe consequences by the Meishan City High People's Court. She was sentenced to 22 years in prison and ordered to pay 130,000 yuan in compensation to the victim's family. This was a fitting price for the double life she had led, which ultimately came to light. The case has come to an end, but its aftermath serves as a profound reminder of the importance of compassion and understanding, as well as the devastating consequences of allowing jealousy and hatred to dictate one's actions. What are your thoughts on this case? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments below. Goodbye.